Patrick Vellner is by far the best CrossFitter of all time, out of the guys who've never won the CrossFit Games. Throughout his long career, Patrick Vellner has put together one of the greatest CrossFit resumes of all time, including 8 CrossFit Games appearances, with 5 of those standing on the podium. He also has an abundance of wins and podium finishes in out-of-season CrossFit competitions like the Rogue Invitational and Wodapalooza. For years, he stacked up podium finishes at the CrossFit Games while competing against one of the greatest to ever do it, Mat Fraser. When Fraser retired, it seemed like Pat was the apparent heir to the throne. And in 2021, the year after Fraser retired, everyone expected Pat, a seasoned veteran in his prime, to finally take over. Instead, Pat took another second-place finish behind the 21-year-old Justin Medeiros. Year after year, we have gone into the season expecting it to be the year Pat gets his first win, and year after year, he comes as close as you can possibly get without actually winning. How can Pat be one of the top performers in the sport for almost a decade, rack up podium finishes at the CrossFit Games, and win numerous out-of-season competitions, and somehow still never win the title of fittest on earth? I have found 3 things that might be responsible for Pat's struggles, and they might not be what you would have expected. Let's start with the most talked about and possibly most obvious reason for Pat's struggles. That is Pat's infamous first event blunders. Throughout his career, it feels like Pat has had a hole to climb out of after the first event of every single CrossFit Games. And as I looked into it further, I realized how poorly he actually does in the first event. In the second event of each year at the CrossFit Games, throughout his 8 years, Pat Vellner has an average of a 9.6th place finish. In the third event of each year, he has an average placing of 9.5, and if you go down the list of his average placings throughout the weekend in his career, you will see most of them fall around an average of a 9th place finish. And then there is the first event of each year, throughout his 8 years, where Patrick Vellner has an average placing of 23rd. More than 2 times worse his average on every single other event of the weekend. But the issue is deeper than just first event jitters. Pat's first event struggles are often attributed to the perception that the first event of every year is a swimming event. Throughout his career, these are the events that have included swimming: a 35th place finish on the Ocean Swim from 2016, a 36th place finish in the Run Swim Run from 2017, a 21st place finish in the Madison Tri Plus from 2018, a 35th place finish in Event 1 from 2021, and a 30th place finish in Rinse and Repeat from 2022, for an average of a 31st place. For someone who has stood on the podium 5 separate times at the CrossFit Games, this is an absurdly low average placing, especially considering the fact that it doesn't seem to be getting better year over year. It's true, Pat Vellner is not a good swimmer, but only 2 of these events actually happened as the first event of the year, which means swimming is not the only thing bringing down his first event average. If you look at his finishes for the first event of the weekend, you can see there are 3 more placings outside of swimming that are not so good. And guess what all 3 of those have in common? A bike. In 2018, he took a 35th place finish on the Crit. In 2022, he took a 20th on Bike to Work. And in 2023, he took a 27th place finish in the workout Ride. There could be a variety of things going wrong, but whatever it is, Pat Vellner seems to struggle when they bring out the bikes at the CrossFit Games. Patrick Vellner doesn't struggle with the first event of each year. He struggles because the first event often includes not only swimming, but also biking, regardless of whether it took place as the first event or not. 8 of 14 of all events throughout his career where he has placed below 20th can be attributed to biking or swimming. Now, finally, I could not find any statistics to back this up, but I've seen it enough to know it's something that consistently plagues Pat in competition. And here are 3 perfect examples of how this issue has played out in the past. At the 2022 CrossFit Games, there was an event called Shuttle to Overhead that went like this. There were 2 scores. Part A was how long it took you to do the shuttle runs, and Part B was how many reps you got on the max shoulder to overheads. In this event, he was pretty easily one of the first ones off of the run on each interval, but the shoulder to overheads is where he absolutely fell apart, missing lift after lift after lift. He finished the event taking 4th place on the running portion and a terrible 35th place finish on the shoulders to overhead portion. And the 35th place finish almost doesn't even tell the full story of how bad this performance actually was compared to his competitors. The winner of this workout was Jeff Adler with 19 reps, which is almost 4 times as many as the 5 reps Pat got in this workout. The second example of this happened just a few months later at the 2022 Rogue Invitational. Going into the final event, Pat only had to beat Justin Medeiros by 1 spot on this event to win the whole entire competition. And that final event
was heavy grace. Straight away from the beginning of the event, you can see a difference in the way they move. Justin gets straight into a comfortable overhead position on his jerk, while Pat looks like he puts it over his head and then has to readjust from there. Through the first 20 reps, Pat had pulled ahead of Justin by 2 reps and advances to the final bar of 10 before Justin does. Sadly, during this last set of 10, Pat again starts to struggle putting the bar over his head and starts failing reps. With 5 reps left to go, Justin actually gets ahead. Pat falls behind not only Justin, but a few more athletes as well. And just like that, 1 minute and 2 missed jerks later, Pat fell from almost winning the competition to taking 4th overall. And finally, this most recent example happened just a few months ago at the 2024 CrossFit semifinals. Event 5 of this year's semifinals was a snatch ladder with descending reps and ascending weight. And this event is where we saw Pat take his customary bottom half finish. Pat ended up taking 22nd in the snatch ladder at the semifinals, but it's even worse when you think about it this way. Out of all of the 40 guys who qualified for the CrossFit Games this year, Pat Vellner's score on this snatch ladder was good for 38th. Most of the other Games athletes were in the 5 to 7-ish minute range, while Pat Vellner took almost 10.5. I couldn't find any statistics to back this up, but I've seen it numerous times, and these 3 examples show it perfectly. At first, I thought it was an issue with his shoulders in general, but this is clearly not the case. Pat Vellner is one of the best at handstand walks, wall walks, and does great on plenty of other events with heavy overhead pressing and stability. For example, 2021 Event 4 included a ton of wall walks and heavy thrusters. On an event like this that is just 16 minutes of overhead pressing and stability, I would have expected Pat Vellner to do poorly. Yet he took a very impressive 7th place finish. It's not that Pat has weak shoulders, it's much more specific than that. Pat Vellner has a problem with being in a squatted position with the barbell locked out overhead. All 3 of these movements I gave you can see are either a jerk or a snatch with the barbell. Movements where you have the bar locked out overhead while not standing straight up yet. In CrossFit, if you want to win, you can't have a single hole in your game, no matter how minor. Sadly, Patrick Vellner seems to have a few. He's consistently struggled with swimming throughout his whole entire career, and for one reason or another, he has done poorly with biking events. On top of this, he's taken some huge hits on points throughout competitions due to his struggles with his overhead position. Pat is one of the best in the world at almost everything you can think of when it comes to fitness. For years, he has consistently looked like he was right on the verge of becoming the fittest man on earth, and yet a few small holes in his game seem to be holding him back from achieving that.